I'm Dave Porcelino, an audio description engineer, and you're listening to the Audio Description Narrators of America Know Your Narrator series.
Today, we're very honored to have Bridget Melton. She is a live theater audio describer. Thanks for joining us, Bridget.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
What do you love about audio description?
The thing that I absolutely love the most is all of the research that I get to do in bringing the best choices to the script that I'm writing and going to be voicing. There's a great quote from a naturalist that is, the paraphrasing of the quote is, visual is forgetting the verbal names for things. And I find that so true when if I'm extemporaneously describing something, you're sometimes stuck going, I don't know the word for this. And so I love doing all of the research just to make sure that I'm not giving misinformation and that I'm actually giving a description that is accurate and is also culturally sensitive. Things change so much every day, every year for what words are appropriate and terms are appropriate. And so I really, really love getting to do the research to make sure that I'm presenting the best script that I can for somebody.
I bet there's a lot of assumptions that you as a describer, both writing and voicing, that it's like once you learn it, you're done. And you're saying that with the research that it's constantly evolving.
Constantly. And I absolutely love that. I was working on describing some classwork for a student at a university here in Chicago. And I was doing the ballet, The Rite of Spring. And it was a video of the 1980s production that Joffrey had done, the Joffrey Ballet here in Chicago, where they have recreated and rebuilt this phenomenal ballet. I'm watching a 1980s quality archival video of this, and it just really struck me, all of their costumes, me as an American watching this Russian ballet, the costumes felt so Native American to me. That was my visual vocabulary for this was, oh, they've got headdresses and headbands around their heads. They've got these great geometric designs to their clothing. And then in doing research, this is why you do research. All of it was based off this, the original artist designers' ideas of what primeval Russian folklore and images looked like. And I thought, this is why you research. I don't put my foot in my mouth drawing comparisons that aren't there and don't exist, but you never want to put your subjectiveness on display. So that was a really good learning opportunity for me of, yay, research always helps.
And with that, it sounds like you're really avoiding those assumptions and the subjectiveness that you really have to have a real awareness. Like this has got to be
Yes.
like a meditation Buddhist practice or something, that kind of awareness has got to be essential for what you do.
Yeah, and there's a phenomenal Tumblr that I came across that the whole, I believe it's called Writing with Colors. And the whole Tumblr is actually aimed towards writers. How can they add depth to their diverse characters, especially if you as a writer do not identify as that? And so it's been really eye-opening for me with my character descriptions, making sure that I'm not comparing people's skin tones to food, that I'm helping them be seen as people, not as a commodity. I wasn't aware of that cultural sensitivity. And so, yeah, it's just where research is leading me. I'm learning so many things about the world around me that I hadn't bothered to look into before until suddenly I am responsible for somebody else's taking in and interpreting of this art. I better make sure that I'm presenting it to my audience in the appropriate way so that they're also learning and being educated at the same time, just without misinformation.
With all your experience in live theater or any experience with audio description, do you have a favorite type of work that you just love to do?
The easiest for me to approach is actually straight theater, theater that doesn't have music, there's no song and dance in it. I quite like that for just how calm I feel when I'm describing it. I'm one of the main audio describers for Broadway in Chicago. And so I really kind of cut my teeth on a lot of musicals. And I spent 3 years on Hamilton while they were here in their residency in Chicago. And so I do have to say, I like the calmness that a straight production can bring me.
Can you name some other examples of your experience in describing that maybe an opportunity that you're really proud of how you overcame some of the obstacles or the problems, your approach?
Yeah, for me, that was actually Hamilton. Hamilton was literally the second show I had ever described. I had a moment of being in the right place, the right time to be asked if I could fill in. And that fill in led to a 3-year career audio describing that. I got to audio describe that show live over 25 times. And it was such a remarkable exercise in how my script changed from my very first description to that final description where I almost didn't even have to look at my script anymore. It was one of the few musicals that I've really scripted out. A lot of times you get a feel for a show and you can do it extemporaneously, having practiced it a whole lot. And Hamilton, I absolutely had my script, had my words scripted out. A lot of it because, it's a phenomenal show, but also my patrons have paid a pretty penny to see this. And I've got to make sure that I'm right on par with all of those actors and how tight and good they are. And so I really, really loved working on Hamilton, getting all of the patron feedback that there's such an immediacy in live theater. You get to meet your patrons at intermission. You talk with them for like 15 minutes before the show. And so I really appreciated how much I could evolve on that. And it really just made everything down the line so much better for me. All the other shows, I just learned so much from Hamilton. I was so proud of getting to take that opportunity and run with it. And I learned so much on it.
Are there any other examples of different kinds of description that you've done recently that you could talk about?
The Democratic National Convention, my colleague Martin Wild and I were ecstatic to have our proposal be selected by the committee to audio describe that. And that one was such a great exercise. Not only had Martin and I, we'd never collaborated before. We're both audio describers here for live events in Chicago, and we've always shared tips and have always been very supportive of each other and in the community. And so working with him on that, it was great to have another audio describer there where we could both give feedback to each other and we both knew how to accept it. And nights 1 and 2 of the convention, we called in a very different style where we were really only speaking in the pauses as we felt was appropriate. And then we got patron feedback less than half an hour before night 3 went to broadcast. And patron feedback was like, we need more context, don't worry. We can distinguish your voices from the presentations. And so we said, great. We had an emergency little meeting and we said, this is how we like to do it. These are things we want to hit. These are things we don't want to hit. And we just went with it. And so nights 3 and 4 have such a different feel. And I was so grateful to be collaborating with somebody that could also think on their feet. And we just went for it. So that was a really good exercise in, hey, you got patron feedback, make it happen.
It sounds like that patron feedback allowed you to adapt to what they wanted. And you're literally having that loop of the feedback.
Yeah, it's such an odd notion sometimes to be an audio describer, because inherently as an audio describer, you aren't a user of audio description in the same way. And so because a lot of times I'll still have a visual that I'm seeing, and so I'll think, hey, my description was pretty good. And then I've had a patron, I was doing Wicked, and a patron was very kind to point out I was using pronouns way too much. Wicked has 2 female leads and a majority female cast. And I was under an assumption that their voices were different enough. And it was a great exercise in, hey, stop making assumptions, Bridget. Because the patron said, I don't know who you're talking about. You just keep saying her. And thank goodness she told me that at intermission. We had house managers in place that were specifically there to make sure that patron was happy and getting what they needed. And I got that note and I said, great. And I've never done it again. That was pretty early in my career. And that's just the power of feedback. Sometimes people can be hesitant to give feedback, that it won't be received or it'll be dismissed. Or in worst case, that the service will go away because it was criticized. And we're not going anywhere. Like, this is what we love to do. And we can only be better and deliver a better service when people can be frank and honest with us.
It's so great to hear you say that. Not that people are afraid of audio description going away, but that this is a message that you're sharing with our audiences that listen to this podcast, that we're literally creating audio description snobs. By hearing from you and what you bring to the table and how you care for it, it's like, oh, we can have it better and not lose out. And it's more than just being, oh, Oh, we've got audio description. Thank you. It's like, oh, this really does make a difference.
Yeah. And it can always be better.
If you were to think about your dream world in audio description in the future, I think about the DNC. I think this is one of the first times that the convention's been described.
The Democratic National Convention has had description, I believe, since 2004, but it's always been on site. It hasn't been for this larger broadcast audience. And that was incredibly exciting to get to help bring that out.
Oh, thanks for clarifying that. Very good to know. It's really good to know. When I look at the audio description evolution that seems to be happening now and how audiences are definitely engaging a lot more, where would you love to see audio description go, or what's the pulse of what's happening in audio description from your perspective?
I'm very heartened by how much I'm seeing on streaming services, because there's so many benefits to audio description outside of just trying to make the visual verbal for patrons with blind or low vision. It can really help with language development. It can help people with autism read facial cues and things like that. I really love that. I would like to see it embraced the way that we've seen captioning embraced. I really, really want streaming services, the user submitted ones, such as like YouTube and Vimeo and stuff. To me, it seems such an easy switch that you could just toggle audio tracks. And I would love to see that, because surprisingly, so many people have no idea what my career as an audio describer is. And when you explain that, oh, you can kind of turn it on the same way you turn on captions. And they're like, oh, okay, like I know what captions are. I have a reference for that. And I want to see people have that same reference for audio description, because it can only help it grow. And we've got an entire 2 generations now, millennials and Gen Zers, that are growing up expecting the ADA to be there and expecting it to continue to push boundaries the way it has been since the beginning. So let's keep going with it. Like, come on, YouTube, we can do this. I would be so excited to see it integrated into platforms more.
Is there anything else you'd like to share with our audience?
Oh, just that I love doing it. I really do love doing it. I know like the American Council for the Blind is trying to work on more of like a certification for audio description to give a standard. And I do feel like so many organizations put out, like the Smithsonian the Design Museum, they put out great Cooper Hewitt guidelines for describing, static images and alt text and things like that. I would like to see the scope of kind of, I guess, the line disappear between media audio describers and live event audio describers. You don't get to flex your muscles in one group if you're part of the other group. So as somebody doing it for live events, there's so much kind of different skills, but it's all basically the same. So I would like to see more crossover, and also more crossover with writers being the narrators as well. I would quite love to see more crossover between the 2 groups.
And how can people reach you, Bridget, either on social media or a website?
Yeah, I've got a website. You can also email me from that. It's just bridgetmelton.com. BRIDGET, M as in Mary, ELTON as in Nancy.com.
Thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.